Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. And of course, to thank the presenter for the very good presentation. And as Uganda, we want to align ourselves with the issues that have been presented. Especially, I think the presenter indicated the legal and institutional framework as very pertinent in the implementation of inclusive growth strategies. In Uganda, actually, what we've done is that in 2021, we put in place what we call the Climate Change Act to legally enforce the implementation of climate change responsive measures in line with the resolutions from international conventions such as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. At the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, we also established what we call the Climate Finance Unit, whose major role is to enhance the mobilization of climate financing at the ministry. In respect that WACLA has achieved several milestones. As of now, WACLA mobilized about $1.95 million from the Global Fund Growth Initiative for the development of that unit. Uganda has also put in place what we call the Green Economy Recovery Plan, that was in 2022, to address any pending issues in the critical areas of joint financing, including climate finance, renewable energy, and resilient agriculture, among others. So on the issue of financing, there are several issues that we see as critical to inclusive growth economies. First, we need to balance the allocation of private sector investment across areas that generate economic, social, and environmental outcomes. So key here is the issue of the environmental outcomes. So when we are doing this, we need to balance these allocations. I think the issue of innovative financing also came up, and we believe we need to critically use innovative financing instruments and mechanisms to leverage emerging sources of financing. We talked of the carbon, the issue of the carbon emissions, the green bonds, sustainability bonds, and sustainability-linked bonds. All this we have to put into perspective. And I think, thank you, Chair. Those are our key issues for discussion.
Thank you, Uganda, for your continued interventions. Most appreciated. Next, Tanzania.
Thank you, Excellency Chairperson, for this opportunity. Chairperson, our contribution will base on the key issue for discussion. Issue number 2 on carbon market, and the number 3 on technical support needed. Dear colleague, Tanzania is actively pursuing innovative strategy for resource mobilization to support its transition to a green economy. One crucial initiative is the implementation of financial inclusion program aimed at integrating more citizens into the informal banking sector, thus expanding the tax base and increasing domestic resources. This approach, Chairperson, is designed to enhance the government's ability to fund sustainable development projects and reduce reliance on external financing. However, like many other African countries, Tanzania is facing systemic financial challenges. Financing gap, rising public debts, and the challenges in mobilizing domestic resources compounded by illicit financial flow, which significantly hinder progress. Therefore, we urge member states to focus on the domestic resource mobilization through innovative financing, such as bond, partnership to reduce overdependence in foreign assistance and non-concessional borrowing. Chairperson, also access to climate finance is critical for enabling the transition to green economy. However, the complexity and duration of the accreditation process to the Green Climate Fund can be a significant barrier. In this regard, Tanzania is of the view that a unified and coordinated approach is necessary in our call for, number one, simplification of the GCF accreditation process to make it more accessible and less time-consuming for countries, especially those with limited resources, to gain accreditation. This simplification should not compromise due diligence, but rather streamline administrative procedure. Number two, enhancing support for applicants. This is through the provision of technical assistance and capacity building initiative to help countries navigate the accreditation process more effectively. This support is crucial for ensuring that projects, particularly those aimed at vulnerable community and sector, such as clean cooking, receive timely funding. Thank you very much, Chairperson. We submit.
Thank you, Tanzania. I think the issue of the GCF, I think that's going to be an interesting one in terms of country experiences with the GCF. Has it made an impact? What are the issues? Maybe we'll find a common thread of issues so that we have an African position on this critical issue. So maybe, Hanan, you can take note and maybe elaborate on that later on and see how we can move on. Next is DRC. The passion.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour l'occasion qui m'est offerte de prendre la parole. En tout cas, je loue, Monsieur le Président, Excellence, Monsieur le Président, la qualité de l'exposé que nous venons de suivre tout à l'heure. Et je félicite l'intervenante. Mais, néanmoins, nous voudrions dire, nous de la RDC, que l'Afrique est la région qui a le moins contribué aux émissions mondiales de gaz à effet de serre, mais qui est le plus touchée par le changement climatique. Notre préoccupation est celle de savoir quelles sont les mesures que nous pouvons mettre en place pour atténuer les effets du changement climatique dans le continent africain. Quant à la mobilisation des ressources financières, la mobilisation des ressources financières est indispensable au succès du processus de transformation durable, en permettant l'appropriation au niveau local du processus de transformation et de développement et ouvrant accès au financement pérenne indispensable. À cet égard, nous proposons que le pays africain devrait mieux utiliser la rente que leur procurent leurs ressources naturelles, par exemple, en transformant un certain pourcentage de cette rente dans un fonds spécial qui servirait à financer les investissements publics pour l'infrastructure, la formation de capital humain, l'acquisition et le développement des technologies, le développement des énergies et la protection des ressources naturelles. Mais la transparence et le principe de responsabilité sont importantes, Monsieur le Président, et pour éviter que ces fonds spéciaux ne soient pas détournés à travers d'autres fonds que celles prévues. Enfin, ma troisième préoccupation concerne le financement carbone. Monsieur le Président, chère assistance, la finance carbone c'est un potentiel opportunité pour le développement économique de l'Afrique. Ainsi, la délégation de la RDC, nous suggérons qu'il soit créé un marché carbone africain. Je dis et je vous remercie.
Thank you, DRC. Again, we like your passion. Thank you so much for the passion. I'm sure from your passion we can build on that. We have a reality of Aid Africa Network, a CSO at the back. They want to contribute. You have the floor. Are they the ones?
I thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, I also want to join others in congratulating the government of Zimbabwe for hosting and leading this very important conference. Mr. Chairman, as you heard in the morning, Africa holds or is a home to 54% of the world's poor are in Africa, and that should become a major area of concern for us. And indeed, as we design the future, we must really think about government initiatives that should be moving directly towards addressing this pandemic of poverty. I just call it pandemic because it's more than 50%, Mr. Chairman, of the world's poor being in the continent. And in that regard, Mr. Chairman, we really have to think about elements that are critical to helping us address this pandemic. And that requires for us, particularly our governments in the continent, to focus on creating our own physical space that is not necessarily embedded on how much money we are missing out there, but really based on our own resource needs and the mineral potentials that we have, and really use that to design a framework that should respond to the needs of our countries, but most importantly, to the poverty trends that we are seeing. And here I want to align myself with the delegate from Ghana that indeed we must look inwardly. And that means we create safety nets to protect the small and medium-scale enterprises, which are going to be the engine of really restoring the economic conditions in our countries. Mr. Chair, I want to reiterate another point, that one of the most critical resources for addressing poverty is indeed concessional resources. But what we are seeing is indeed donors are becoming the main consumers of their own aid. I think what we need to focus on is really how we can not go out there as beggars, but convert some of these commitments that have been made globally into debt. The 0.7 GNI that was given more than 4 decades ago should be converted into a debt that then Africans can demand to be paid, and not that we go there to beg for us to be considered for help. I rest my case, Mr. Chair.
Case well rested. Thank you. The issue of concessional funding, for me, I think we have to move beyond concessional financing as Africa, really. We have the resources, we have the people, etc. We've discussed all these issues. So why are we still poor? I mean, it's a serious indictment on us. So for me, I wouldn't want to stress the issue of going with a bowl out there. I would rather we see how we can take advantage of the natural resources we have and see how we can fund our own destiny. To me, I think we need to take charge of that destiny. And I don't think we can do it with reliance, heavy reliance on concessional financing. I think it was Ghana who was saying we have a lot of African private sector capital, which can be productively invested in Africa. So I think we have to look at all these options. Any other? Côte d'Ivoire? I see Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie la présentatrice pour cette brillante présentation. Je voulais rappeler que la Côte d'Ivoire s'est engagée depuis 2012 dans la transition vers une économie verte. Donc, récemment, elle a accueilli en 2022 la 15e conférence des parties, dénommée la COP 15, sur la déforestation, qui a débouché sur des engagements forts regroupés sous le vocable Abidjan Legacy Programme, qui était d'un montant de 1,5 milliard de dollars. Mais toutefois, les engagements de financement de 2,11 milliards de dollars de plusieurs bailleurs, dont la BAD, la Banque mondiale, le FIDA, l'Union européenne et la BOAD, n'ont toujours pas été concrétisés. Donc il y a la Côte d'Ivoire qui a aussi pris l'engagement de réduire ses émissions de gaz à effet de serre de 30,41% contre un engagement à l'horizon 2030, contre un engagement initial qui était de 28%. Par ailleurs, dans le cadre de la remise en état de son couvert forestier, la Côte d'Ivoire a lancé un programme de sensibilisation de la population à travers l'opération Un jour, 50 millions d'arbres. Alors cette opération a permis de planter 3 808 274 arbres sur plus de 3 347 hectares de forêt en 2022. Donc à cela s'ajoutent aussi plusieurs autres programmes et politiques. Et cependant, le défi qu'on a reste le financement et la difficulté d'accès aux fonds climatiques dont les ressources sont virtuellement disponibles, mais l'accès est un peu compliqué. Donc, ce qu'on demande, c'est qu'est-ce que la CEA peut faire pour faciliter l'accès ou pour rendre facile l'accès de ces ressources-là. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Any other contributions from the floor? Right at the back, I can't see. You can take the floor and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Sarah Maka, Executive Director for Africa for the One Campaign. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and this session and allowing us to make some comments. I have two comments. On the short term, there is an opportunity for middle-income and low-income countries to get development finance at concessional rates through the current IDA 21 replenishment. The reason why this is very important is because we've spoken about the high cost of capital, and IDA represents an opportunity for African countries to get a 0% and very concessional rate. But we need African voices to make a demand for that. As we sit here today, in March, our countries will be negotiating with donor countries to get more IDA. And those negotiations will happen all the way to December. So it's an imperative for our voice. The second comment is a long-term initiative. I want to applaud the work that DRC and Zambia are doing on coming together to process raw materials. As the presentation rightly said, Africa is exporting too many raw materials and we need to add value. However, the only way Africa can do that is if we come collectively as one voice to impose a moratorium on exporting raw materials so that we can invite others to come into the continent and add value to those raw materials. That's how we can increase our revenue. It is a long-term play. It requires a collective African voice because 1 or 2 or 3 countries alone cannot make this happen. So I'd like to propose those 2 ideas to the chair for consideration. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the contribution. IDA replenishments, yes, they contribute to our resource needs at concessional rates, but in terms of IDA replenishments filling the financing gap, I'm not so sure. I've participated in 2 of these replenishments, and I'm not so sure if that's the solution for Africa. That's my own personal view, but it's worth following up. And then the issue of collaboration, we have spoken about that. I think that's going to be critical. We have the Central Bank of Egypt online. Can we connect, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I thank Dr. Morsi for her contribution and the presentation. I would like to add some point to the discussion. That is the African continent is home to many of the world's natural capital, including 30% of mineral reserves, the 8% of natural gas, 12% of oil reserves, and 40% of gold, and up to 90% chromium and platinum. The largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium in the world are found in Africa. The continent holds 65% of the world's arable land and 10% of the planet's internal renewable freshwater resources. We encourage the international financial institutions and credit rating agencies to consider accounting for an inclusive GDP new measures that take into account such resources. This will not only enhance the economic activities in the continent by encouraging investments, but also would help support the African countries' credit ratings and hence pave the way for a reduction in costs of borrowing for the continent and enhance its access to a capital market. I thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Now I'm going to, before Hanan comes in, I'm going to quote an African leader recently at the AU opening. The quote goes as this: if the owners of natural resources go around begging, then you should know there's something wrong with their minds. I rest my case. Hanan, please.
Thank you.
Before Hanan,
sure.
I think there's Comoros. Sorry. The Minister of Finance, Honorable, thank you for being with us. You have the floor. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner la parole. Et je saisis d'abord l'occasion pour remercier le gouvernement de Zimbabwe pour l'accueil chaleureux dans leur belle ville que nous sommes en train de vivre, pour laquelle nous sommes en train de vivre le climat et tout. Je salue particulièrement la présentation de Dr Anna, mais je me demande s'il ne faut pas approfondir trois questions qui constituent des défis communs à nous tous, dont on a parlé de mystère carbone, on parle de manque d'expertise et on parle aussi de coopération publique-privée. Ce sont trois défis qui me semblent énormes et essentiels pour tout le continent. Par rapport à cela, il me semble qu'il serait indiqué de disposer d'instruments adaptés, sinon dédiés, pour, d'une part, résoudre la non-disponibilité des informations sur le climat, parce que ça constitue un défi pour tout le monde. On n'a pas le même niveau d'information pour le sujet. Et on n'a pas un cadre dédié pour l'évaluation de nos capacités carbone, en fait. pour pouvoir rentrer au même niveau dans le marché carbone. Et on parle aussi de la mobilisation du secteur privé qui demande à ce qu'il y ait une coopération publique-privée, donc un cadre de coopération pour l'ensemble des pays. Donc, par rapport à tout cela, je crois qu'il est temps de disposer des réseaux pour certains pays comme les petits États insulaires qui constituent une entité dans l'ensemble du continent africain et qui pourraient aussi constituer une force de développement, sinon une force de proposition et d'action pour aller plus vite dans ces défis. Je crois que ces questions-là, ce sont des questions qui peuvent faire l'objet de résolutions ici pour que nous puissions aller concrètement dans des propositions qui peuvent nous donner des solutions assez concrètes. Donc je m'arrête là en supposant qu'il y aura ici, on aura ici à sortir une stratégie de croissance verte pour l'ensemble des pays africains, parce que chaque pays dispose de sa stratégie et on ne peut pas se contenter de des stratégies de chaque pays, plutôt avoir une stratégie commune pour l'ensemble du continent et avoir des solutions dédiées pour l'ensemble des pays. Merci.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your wise guidance there. I think I like the issue you're raising of the carbon mystery and the three critical areas you have talked about, and also this idea of a dedicated framework. I think it's an interesting proposal. Any more contributions before we move to our online contributions? Okay, there is Africa ICT Alliance, Mr. Jimson Olufuye. Can we connect him, please? Okay, for time, maybe I'll ask Hanan to start her responses, and then we can try again the online contributions. Hanan, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by really thanking all the delegates for the valuable insights and contributions and very lively discussion. Let me start with some of the remarks you made, Chair, regarding the pipeline of bankable project. This is a very important area that we have been working closely on with partners, including Audanibad, to develop, viable pipeline of bankable projects. But I think there is also another element that I find really also striking, which is when we have the bankable projects and we go to the investors and the bilaterals, the MDBs and others that internationally, the next thing is they tell you, oh, but the size is too small. So I think beyond the, preparing and supporting the bankable projects, we need to find a way of aggregating opportunities to actually make sure that once this is done, it's actually attractive and ensures the availability of the required financing. So that would be also an area that need further work to avail resources. On the area of the green-blue bonds mystery, well, I think there are a number of African countries, and we had before even one of the Minister of Finance of Egypt before spoke about their experience with green bond issuances, that at the end, it was not much lower than other bonds, yet it was very heavy in terms of reporting and in terms of all the burden of, providing the information and the data on the use of resources and so on. So here, one of the key issues is this, basically it needs to be attractive to invest this time and resources to actually issue green bonds that need to be, to provide you with advantages to just normal, bond issuances, because you are committing to specific climate actions. Hence, that's why we're saying that for these type of bonds, we need to have credit enhancement. We need to have things like, sovereign guarantees or MDB-backed guarantees to lower the cost, because there is a lot that you're putting on the table in terms of commitments. It needs to be also matched with what you're getting in terms of cost. Second, there is the issue of also having the statistical and data infrastructure to ease the burden of reporting. And that's why we need to develop this so that it's not an additional burden, but it's already data and information points that would be regularly available. And what you're going to be doing is capitalizing on that to actually show quantified, credible results. So these are some of the things that I think would be key, and some also the areas that we have been working on at ECA, including, for example, through the initiative on debt, Sustainable Debt Coalition that came out of COP27. Of course, I couldn't agree more with the chair on the issue of how much it matters where and how debt is actually being used, because that basically determines its sustainability. It should not be to finance current expenditure. It should be to finance investments and actions that actually basically provide the returns long term. And that is really the responsibilities of governments at the African level to ensure the good use of that debt so that it gets the highest returns and it's an investment for the future. And there are a number of countries that, for example, that had national mechanisms that kind of provide the checks and balances that this is actually being done. So I think we need stronger ownership in ensuring that at a national level, so that we can have better governance and transparency of the use of that debt. Of course, on the issue of carbon market, I think one thing that perhaps I had not mentioned, we also need to, we are working on all this work in terms of supporting the development of national and regional carbon markets, but we also need the system even globally to work, meaning we need to have a fair carbon pricing. We cannot have carbon pricing in Europe that is $120 per ton and less than 10 in Africa. So we need to be fairly compensated for what we are contributing. And we start with doing our part in terms of, enhancing the integrity, strengthening the integrity of the carbon markets and improving transparency, but we need to ensure that there is the appropriate and fair pricing of carbon credit. We had the intervention and questions from Ghana. Thank you very much. You've already mentioned a few things that Ghana is doing, but on the idea of sustainable bonds, I think monitoring and reporting of proceeds is very important. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really key to reduce the burdensome of doing that by having that data infrastructure. But you've raised a very important point in terms of how can we leverage more of the national and continental resources. And I totally agree with you that we need to work a lot more and deepen our efforts to develop local capital markets and regional capital markets so that actually this can materialize. For example, in a number of African countries, because of current regulations, pension funds cannot invest in capital markets. That's an issue. Like if your own pension funds, by rules, are not allowed to invest, who do you think, like who would invest in it? So I think we need to look at regulatory aspects. We need to look into ways of improving the liquidity and the functioning of the national and regional capital markets. And this will be really key. This is how we can fund our own developments. And in many times, actually, these investments have higher returns than what the resources alternatively go for. Zimbabwe talked about the issue of continental-based certification and verification. I think there are a number of entities that support us, not just ECA, but also other UN agencies. Burkina Faso, they talked about the issue of biodiversity credit and the need to actually ensure how do we ensure that there is a fair compensation and the need to harness solar energy. What I want to emphasize in this regard is we have a huge opportunity that being latecomers to development. Yes, we are at a disadvantage in many things, but it's a huge opportunity. Starting or doing it later means you can benefit. You start from where others have ended. So we don't need to start from where they started 30 years ago. We have options. We have, for example, the cost of solar energy is now massively, massively cheaper than if you looked at it 20 years ago. We need to invest that the solutions that we are doing is solutions for the future. We need to make sure that we are capitalizing on the resources that we have rather than exporting our development opportunities by just exporting raw materials. We need to actually build the value chains domestically and regionally to utilize this. And we need to make sure that we are setting the system, including from skills perspective, to actually support that. We need to lead the way, not just be consumers of green products going forward. I couldn't agree more that the issue of green transition also covers sustainability of resources. Of course, also sustainability of use of water going forward. This is one of the key issues to ensure food security, especially with the changes in weather and droughts and floods and all that. So it will be really important. I agree with the delegate remark on this. Libya, thank you for the question. We have been helping in a number of areas with regard to greening. We'll be happy to take the conversation with the teams forward in terms of the type of things that we're doing and what would be perhaps attractive for your country. Uganda, thank you for sharing the experiences in terms of the national, the Climate Act and the Green Economic Recovery Plan that was made. I completely agree with you on the need to leverage innovative financing solutions. Part of it, of course, is building the capacity internally to actually be able to utilize that. And ECA will be happy to support in that area. Tanzania, it's really interesting the experience you've shared in terms of implementing financial inclusion measures and how this can actually help with domestic resource mobilization and broadening the tax net or tax base. I think a number of Tanzania and others have talked about the Green Climate Fund in terms of access. I think totally agree that it has not perhaps delivered as we had hoped for, and part of it is how long it takes to go through the process and the complexity. So one area is how can we help in simplifying the process, but I think even maybe important issue is how can we have a way of simplifying these processes across different funds and financiers. So how can we perhaps, if a certain project and you have all this process that you've gone through to apply for the Green Climate Fund, then can you take that application or can it go automatically to the next, whether it's a development bank or a bilateral agency that work on climate, so that you don't need to restart the process every time you apply for something or it doesn't work with one. It may not work for one because of level of exposure to a certain country or because of focus on whether it's mitigation or adaptation for whatever reason. But to actually reduce the burden of going through these processes, I think some sort of a platform can really help in reducing the burden on countries and also expediting the process. Then we also had Cote d'Ivoire sharing the experience on reforestation program and the point I had just spoken about, which is the complex access to financing, climate financing. We had also Comoros speaking about the challenges due to lack of expertise. I think, of course, this is an area that we realize and we're trying to support member states in it. But also the issue of the suggestion of having a framework to evaluate carbon market capacity. That's a really good point. Thank you. I think this is something we can definitely look into as a way of just assessing the readiness of countries. So it's something we'll take into consideration on how we can, look into this and perhaps develop it. Then there is also the issue of the common strategy for the continent. I think the efforts that we've been trying to build in terms of supporting sub-regional carbon markets is a way forward of really, bringing it together, and hopefully with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, it can provide, the ground to actually advance it, not just at sub-regional level, but broader at a continental level. There are also, other solutions that, we can think of, like, issues of having developing commodity exchange markets to actually promote more of the carbon market integration. So these are all, important ideas that, we'll be looking into going forward. Then for the comment from Egypt on including, the contributions and the potential of the continent, whether through natural resources, whether through, the ability to provide solutions from sequestering carbon, whether through the potential of renewable energy. I think it is important that we make sure that this is actually taken into account. But I would go a step further in saying that not only that, we need to take the positive externality and the negative externality. It needs to be a way to account globally. So for advanced economies that are high polluters, that need to be reflected as a negative externality to the GDP. While Africa, if they are contributing to solutions, that need to be taken into account as a positive contribution, so that we have, in a way, a level playing field where you're not only thinking about how you are producing this activity and that output, but what are you doing and how are you harming the environment or producing negative externality by doing that. You cannot only look at the positive side, completely ignoring the negative externality. So that would be really important, and that would be important also because it provides, like, it's the base, like whatever you measure is relative to your GDP or a measure of GDP. So that would be a way to take into account the positive things that are not taken into account currently, for example, in credit rating. Yes, and then on Sarah from One Campaign, I think I agree on the need to support scaling up of concessional resources, at IMF, at World Bank, at MDBs, because these are very important tools to allow countries to invest in SDG, as well as to take action, climate action. And I think we've been even not only saying the replenishment of IDA, for example, but we've been asking for tripling of these resources going forward, trying to be sufficiently ambitious so that we can actually be able to reform the access to such resources to allow middle-income countries to tap it when they are hit by climate shock. And then on the issue of the moratorium of exports of raw material, as much as, I found that interesting, but of course this would be against WTO rules, so it's quite complex, and we have countries that have tried that, and for example Indonesia, and they had issues or repercussions from doing that. So I think, it's a very important issue that we basically, instead of exporting our development opportunities by just exporting raw material, is how do we really develop the incentives to make it attractive and ensure that there is domestic value added and regional value added around it. And there are, I believe, alternative ways of doing that. And this is what we have been doing, in collaboration with DRC, with Zambia. So we need to just scale up this more in the continent. And finally, I think just wanted to say that some of the things that we're talking about, particularly related to the global financial architecture, will be part of what will be discussed in a breakfast meeting on Monday morning, which ministers or head of delegations plus one will be invited to talk in more details about what need to be fixed at a global level, and I hope that you will join where we will have more in-depth discussion on these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anand, for your comprehensive response and conversation. Now we have Africa ICT Alliance, Mr. Jimson Olufuye, online.
Thank you very much, distinguished chairman. My name is Jimson Olufuye. I'm the chair of the Advisory Council of the Africa ICT Alliance. The Africa ICT Alliance is an alliance of ICT associations and ICT companies and professional individuals across Africa. We're currently in a little over 40 African countries. Our vision is to fulfill the promise of the digital age for everyone in Africa in accord with WIS's 2005 outcomes. So I really want to start by really thanking the UNECA and the government of Zimbabwe for this invitation and the excellent platform. I apologize for the itch, when I was called earlier, it still happens. But basically, it has been a wonderful presentation, excellent presentation, and very rich. And I want to commend all those that have made presentations. So I will just make some few comments. And number one is to say that the private sector is always ready to partner with the public sector with regard to boosting the economic profile of our nations. We are committed to lifting up our people as a government too, are committed to taking our people out of poverty. So we are committed to working hands in hands with our governments. And that is to say that we want our government to embrace multi-stakeholder approach to everything they do. For example, I don't know how many of our delegation, the government delegation, have private sector embedded in this delegation. So I want to encourage that there should be a culture that we should have private sector within our countries embedded in our delegation. They'll be able to fund themselves if advanced information is provided, notification is provided. And talking about this, I must give an example of Nigeria, where the government has been doing a lot to work with the private sector. And then we talk about the result of that with the Dangote and a lot of tech unicorns in Nigeria today. So it works, and it works well if we collaborate, if we cooperate. Secondly, I would like to really say we should challenge our sectors, the private sector, the academic community, the technical community in our countries. We need to be challenged, domestically with regard to solution, even to climate change, even to adding value to our raw materials. We need to be challenged. You'll be surprised that we have a lot of know-how within our countries. I believe the real gap is that we have not been really challenged, given standard framework to really deliver on national requirements. In some cases where it's been done, where I can testify about, it has worked. For example, using clean energy to power data centers. We have used that for more than 10 years, data centers being powered by solar energy, purely solar energy. And it's been working very well. So let's challenge our people, our experts within our country, so that our currency, our resources can stay within Africa. That is when our economy will have value, our currency too will have value. Then thirdly, with regard to agriculture, it's very important. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. We have a lot of arable land, like has been well established, and we know it. So let's focus on that. And that is when resources, our wealth will really show up. Then fourthly, I would like to add my voice with regard to tax issue. I've been talking about taxes, bringing many more people to tax net, but how about optimizing the tax system? The taxation system needs to be optimized, especially in the ICT sector. Because when we optimize it, there'll be more connectivity more people in the underserved area will be connected, and even more revenue will come to the government, basically. And GDP will be boosted. And this reminds me of a research done by UNECA, I think 2 years ago, on the implication of connectivity, that is ICT and cybersecurity, to development in the fourth industrial revolution. And it came out with a very positive outcome. And that is that a 10% increase in internet penetration connectivity will yield between 1 to 8% increase in GDP, putting more money, to every individual per capita. The same thing for cybersecurity. When we boost our cybersecurity by 10%, it will give us about 0.66% to 5.4% boost in GDP per capita. So these are positive outcomes that we are seeing. And then lastly, the link to that report, at least the outcome of that research, is on the website cd4ir.africa, www.cd4ir.africa. So if you follow that link, you'll be able to see the outcome of that research work. Then finally, we have a low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit is with regard to digitalization. UNECA has been promoting a lot of the digitalization agenda and the framework. And when we digitalize our activities, that's our government, then ease of business will be boosted, and then risk will be removed, and more money will be in the hands of the citizens. And with that, our economy will be boosted, and there will be increased inter-Africa relationship, that will support the African Continental Free Trade Zone regime. So Africa, we have a golden opportunity. So I want to thank the chair for giving me the floor, and I want to thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much.
Now, I think, do we have any more takers? Okay. Oh, there's one right at the back. Please identify yourself and let's be concise.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor. I just wanted to comment on one question that was raised about how the UN agencies support. Now, in terms of clean energy, I would like to report that at a global level, WMO collaborates with the International Renewable Energy to foster the forecasting of renewable sources like wind, solar, and hydropower. And this is important to have collaboration at a global level, but also at a regional level. As we know that this climate, the clean energy sources, they are not sustainable. Some of them, they have fluctuation. If I give an example of wind, you can have this source, but after a time you have a fluctuation. So it's important to mainstream climate into operations and management and planning of energy resources. And the WMO is available to support members on this. At a national level, WMO also supports members by providing precise weather, water, and climate data that are crucial requirements for our transition to clean energy. We need to ensure resilience of our energy system against extreme weather and climate change impacts. Even the energy system itself can be impacted by the climate change. So it's important to make sure that we integrate this in the planning. And the WMO is supporting this at all levels, starting from global up to national level. Just wanted to report this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that elaboration on the role of UN agencies. Now, I think we can come to the close of this very interesting session. Thanks, Anand, for the presentation and your conversation with our delegates. I think my take before we close, and then we'll have some announcements. I think I liked your approach on having national, regional, and global perspectives and what needs to happen within each category. And I think it makes us easier for interventions. I think that's a very good approach. So with that, I think I won't waste time repeating and summarizing what she has eloquently done. All it remains for me is to thank you all for the active participation this afternoon. Let's resume this tomorrow. We are starting our meetings tomorrow at 9. So have a very interesting and wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9. I don't know if there are from the Secretariat announcements.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you very much for everybody. I just need to make the announcement for the dinner. There has been a little change of plans because we are being hosted at another event. So thank you very much for this. So the dinner will be at a place called Chipala, which is only a short 4 minutes drive away from here. What we need is for delegates to bring their accreditation card, please. And there is limited parking there. So we are, the host is organizing pickups at 6:15 from the hotel here. So we request you to be at the entrance of the hotel at 6:15 sharp for departure for the shuttle buses. You will be dropped off there and picked up. And if anybody needs to be picked up with a car afterwards, you can do so, but the place doesn't have a lot of parking, so we need to arrange this. But the departure from here is 6:15 with a shuttle bus at the entrance of this hotel. Please don't forget to bring accreditation cards for all member states delegates. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those announcements. So we can break for coffee, tea, then we can prepare for the dinner. I'm told it's going to be wonderful. I don't know, I've not been briefed, but I'm told it's wonderful. So, so we wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you so much.
And we encourage people to visit the women artisans tent where they are selling local handicrafts. It's just here. Thank you.